Welcome to the Life of Sassy and welcome to this week's What's for Dinner. I will be making a roast beef dinner, copycat Panda Express mushroom chicken, and a Chinese chicken salad. If you like all things food with a little bit of life mixed in, please consider joining my YouTube family and clicking that subscribe button. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Now let's get cooking. Tonight I'll be making a beef roast for dinner. For the roast, I need an onion, garlic, salt, pepper. Here's my beef roast, beef broth, garlic powder, and onion powder. Here I have my yellow onion. I just took the ends and the peel off of it. I'm going to go ahead and cut it into thick slices, which I'll put in the bottom of my roasting pan and use almost like a rack. I'm looking to cut them about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. Next, sorry guys, you can't see this. I had a bad camera angle, but I'm just taking my garlic cloves and I'm cutting them in half. These will also go in the bottom of the roasting pan. For this recipe, I'm using 3 garlic cloves. Here I have my roasting pan. I'm just going to go ahead and lay my onions in the pan. As I mentioned, I'm using my onions like a rack so that my roast doesn't sit directly on the bottom of the pan. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle in my garlic cloves. I'm just taking my beef roast and adding it on top of my onions and garlic, and now I'm going to get rid of the packaging. Now I'm going to go ahead and add about 1 cup of beef broth. I like to pour it over the roast. I find it helps my seasoning stick to the roast. Here you can see it's probably a little bit more than 1 cup. I only had a little bit left in this open container, so I just went ahead and added it all in. Next, I'm adding about 1/2 teaspoon each of garlic powder and onion powder to my roast. Since these are stored in shakers, I'm just going ahead and eyeballing it and shaking it onto my roast. Here I'm adding probably about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I don't want to add too much. And here I'm adding between 1/8 and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I don't want to add too much. This pepper is really strong, but I do want to give my roast good flavor. I cook my roast covered, so I'm just adding the lid on. And now I'm just going to go ahead and pop it in a 300-degree oven. It's going to cook for probably about 3 hours. For a side dish tonight, I'm going to be making roasted carrots. I'm going to use olive oil, brown sugar, black pepper, salt, onion powder, garlic powder, and here are my baby carrots that I prepped during my meal prep this week. Here I have a cookie sheet I lined with aluminum foil, and I'm just adding my carrots. This is about 1 tablespoon, maybe a little bit more of olive oil, just enough to coat all of my carrots. I should mention these are going to bake off in a 350-degree oven. I'm adding a pinch of black pepper. It's not even 1/8 teaspoon. This is about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm not measuring it, I'm just eyeballing it. Then I'm going to add about 1/4 teaspoon each. This is garlic powder, and I will do the exact same thing with my onion powder. I'm adding equal amounts of both. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle on about 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And now I'm just going to go ahead and mix these up. I always just use my hands. I find it's best to get all the seasonings and all of the olive oil well incorporated if I just use my hands. Now that I have them all mixed up, I've placed them in a single layer, and I will go ahead and pop them in my preheated 350-degree oven. I'm just popping the carrots in. These are going to roast off for about 20 to 25 minutes. Here are my carrots coming out after being in the oven for about 25 minutes. They're perfectly roasted off. Sorry guys, I missed the roast coming out of the oven. This was our Mother's Day meal, so my mom took the roast out of the oven as well. She made the gravy. I didn't show you the mashed potatoes because these were leftovers we had in the fridge. I just reheated them and added them to the plate. So tonight we had roast beef, mashed potatoes, gravy, and carrots. This is a classic meal that will remain on repeat in our house. I mean, how can you go wrong with a roast beef dinner? Hey everyone, tonight I'm making copycat Pandora Express mushroom chicken. Fun fact, we do not have Panda Express in Canada. I just thought the recipe looked really good, so we're going to give it a try. As you can see here, I do have a number of ingredients, so let's go ahead and break those down. I'm going to be using brown sugar, chicken stock, soy sauce, vegetable oil, oyster sauce, sesame oil, rice vinegar, minced garlic, fresh ginger, sesame seeds, mushrooms, cornstarch, a zucchini, and here I have a chicken breast which was already cut into chunks before we put it in the freezer. Now the first thing I need to do is I need to marinate my chicken. The recipe says it needs to marinate for at least 30 minutes, but can sit overnight. Right now it's just about 2 o'clock. I'll start cooking this around 4:30, so that'll give it about 2.5 hours in the marinade. So let's get started on that. First, I'm going to get my chicken marinating in this bowl. I'm going to need a tablespoon of soy sauce. Then I'm going to use a 1.5 tablespoons of chicken stock. The recipe actually calls for a Chinese wine, which I don't have on hand. I will insert the actual wine below. No one in our house drinks, so we always tend to substitute wine with chicken broth. And then I'm going to go ahead and add 1/2 teaspoon of brown sugar and 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. Then I'm just going to go ahead and mix this up. Lastly, I'll go ahead and I'm just going to add my chicken in. I'm just going to go ahead and mix that around. Now I'm going to take this, cover it in saran wrap, and I'll just put it in the fridge for about the next 2 hours until I'm ready to cook dinner. Since I have everything out, I'm going to go ahead and put together my sauce for when I go ahead and cook this. I'm going to need another tablespoon of soy sauce, 3 tablespoons of chicken stock. I don't know what it is. They've changed the top on these chicken stock and it spills everywhere. Let me grab a cloth. Then I'm going to need a 1.5 teaspoons of brown sugar. Next, I need a tablespoon of the oyster sauce. As always, this one takes a little bit of patience to get it out. Next, I'm going to add a teaspoon of cornstarch. Then I need a teaspoon of sesame oil and a teaspoon of the rice vinegar. The recipe actually calls for, a little bit more than I needed, but that's okay. The recipe actually calls for Chinese black vinegar. I don't have it, but it says you can sub the rice wine vinegar, which I'm going to do. Next, it calls for 2 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to go ahead and use about 1 teaspoon of this minced garlic. Then you need 1/3 teaspoon of grated ginger. I store mine in the freezer. So I'm going to go ahead and just grate that right in. I always eyeball my ginger. I never measure it out because I find it's just too hard to get into the measuring spoon and back out. Not to mention, a little bit extra ginger is never a bad thing in my books. I absolutely love this little grater. I think we only paid like $1 for it, but it is one of my favorite kitchen tools. Now I'm just going to go ahead and whisk up this sauce. I probably shouldn't have left the tablespoon sitting in there. Oops. I don't know why I did that, if I'm being completely honest here, but let's get rid of that and put it in the sink. Now I'm going to go ahead and whisk this up, but since I'm not using this until later, I'm going to keep the whisk in here because the cornstarch is going to settle to the bottom. But what I'm going to do is I'll wrap this in plastic wrap and store it in the fridge until we need it. Now I'm going to go ahead and get my vegetables ready. I remembered I had this bag of mushrooms left over from the other night in my fridge. They need to be used up. You can see they're going brown, but they're not squishy. So I'm going to go ahead and chop these up. The recipe calls for 2 cups of mushrooms. I feel like this is only about 1 cup of mushrooms and I have 3 mushrooms left, so I just went and grabbed another little bowl. Should have grabbed a bigger one, but that's kind of the story of my life. I'm always getting the wrong size container. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and prep this zucchini. The recipe calls for 1 zucchini cut into half moons. Alright, there we go. My 1 zucchini's cut up. I'm going to go ahead and put all of this in the fridge until I'm ready to use it. And I should have mentioned all of my vegetables were pre-washed and cleaned before I started this, but now I have everything together to make my Panda Express copycat mushroom chicken, which I'll make in just a couple of hours after my chicken's had a chance to marinate. Here I have a large pan heating over medium-low heat. I'm going to go ahead and add in a couple tablespoons of vegetable oil. You want to use a neutral oil when cooking this recipe. Now that my pan has heated, I'm going to go ahead and add in my chicken pieces. You don't want to add in the marinade, as the marinade will cause the chicken to steam instead of sear off. So I'm going to lay my chicken in a single layer spread out, but making sure to leave all of the marinade in the bowl. That will just be discarded now. All of my chicken pieces have now been added to the frying pan. I'm just going to let these cook off. The recipe calls for you to cut the chicken into thin slices, and it says to only cook for about 30 seconds to a minute per side. Since I use chicken chunks, mine are going to have to cook a little bit longer. I'm going to stir these occasionally, but they're probably going to cook off for closer to 5 to 7 minutes. I'm just going to cook them until the chicken is cooked all the way through. My chicken's now fully cooked. The recipe calls for you to remove the chicken from the pan. I'm just going to put it in this bowl and leave it off to the side. Off camera, I went ahead and wiped off the side of my pan just to make sure nothing drips on my element. I'm now adding the zucchini into my pan. The recipe calls for you to add the zucchini and mushrooms at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and saute my zucchini for a couple of minutes first because I just personally don't like my mushrooms fully cooked through. I like them to still have a little bit of a bite to them. I let my zucchini cook off for a couple of minutes. Now I'm adding in my mushrooms, and I will let these saute down for a few minutes until they start to cook down. These are going to take about 2 to 3 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, and there we go. Typical me, I just shot a mushroom across the stove. My mushrooms and zucchini have now cooked down. I'm just going to go ahead and add my chicken back in and give this mixture a stir. I'm now creating a well in the middle of my pan. This is where I'm going to pour the sauce into. Because the sauce has cornstarch in it, I am going to give it a quick whisk before I add it in because the cornstarch has settled to the bottom. Now I'll go ahead, give this a quick stir, and then you just want to let it cook down for a minute or two until the sauce starts to thicken. It doesn't take long at all. I turned my back for a second and the sauce was thick. My sauce is now thickened. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat and remove my pan from the stove. My copycat Panda Express mushroom chicken is now done. I'm just going to wait for the rice to come out of the oven. And here's the final dish. I have served the copycat Panda Express mushroom chicken over rice. I also added some sesame seeds for serving. My review on this dish is it was really good. The only thing that threw me off was the recipe said if you don't like your dish to be saucy, only add half of the sauce. We like sauce. We like to mix it in with our rice. So I went ahead and used the full recipe. But as you can see here, there really wasn't a lot of sauce. I would actually probably double the sauce next time, just so that there's a little bit extra to add into our rice. I can't really compare it to Panda Express. We don't have it here, but we really enjoyed this meal and will make it again. For my Chinese chicken salad, I need garlic powder, ginger powder, rice vinegar, soy sauce, sesame oil, olive oil. Here are my toasted almonds, my chopped chicken, and my bowl of Napa cabbage, carrots, and green onions. That was done during my meal prep, so that this salad just needs to be made. Here I have my dressing all combined. Now I'm just going to go ahead and toss the salad together and add in my dressing. Sorry guys, I didn't have my tripod out. I'm trying to cook with one hand and hold the camera with the other. Here I've just combined all of the ingredients and I'm just going to go ahead and toss the salad. Here is the salad once it has been tossed. Here is the final product. Sorry guys, I threw this together quickly after my Costco shopping trip. I was trying to get dinner on the table after filming my haul. I tried to do it without a tripod. Lesson learned, always set up the tripod. Now, this was a new recipe for us. I will admit I was missing a couple of the ingredients. The salad is supposed to include purple cabbage as well as sugar snap peas. I was going to buy sugar snap peas at Costco, but they were really expensive, so I skipped them. All in all, this salad was really good, but I would tweak it if we made it again. We did really enjoy the fact that it was made with Napa instead of lettuce. That was a nice twist, but the dressing was a little bit too tangy for us. I would either reduce the amount of vinegar in the dressing or I would add a little bit of sugar to offset the tanginess of the vinegar. But all in all, this was a good salad. We would definitely make it again, but with a couple of little tweaks. Thank you for stopping by The Life of Sassy, and thank you for watching this week's What's for Dinner. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you like all things to do with food with a little bit of life mixed in, please click that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. As for that Chinese chicken salad, guys, I am so sorry. I was trying to throw it together quickly. I was looking at the recipe, but I wasn't. I was trying not to use a tripod. All in all, I needed to take a deep breath. We will try that recipe again and make sure I have all of the ingredients. Can't believe 3 days later when I went down to my basement, I realized I didn't add the mandarin oranges. They were still in my stockpile. But all of this week's recipes were really good. I will link the Chinese chicken salad and the Panda Express mushroom chicken recipe down below. Thanks again for stopping by. Have a wonderful day, everyone.